Here we are for a tutorial how to play Ecaflip. Ecaflip got a completely rework overhaul on its spells, on its passive a few months ago, and so from then on a lot of people asked me how to play this class, what to do with their passive, what are these cards on top of the head, but don't worry, hopefully in the end of this video you'll have a clue on how to play Ecaflip. So let's start things off with the hardest thing about this class, which is the passive. And if we open our spells, we can click in pretty much all of the elemental spells, if not all of them. We will click on the right click of your mouse and check the pin the tool tip. Once you click this, there will open a new window, and in this window it will explain everything about the spell in specific. So in this case, when you do damage, you get 1 movement point, and you draw a Jack of Spades. And what is a Jack of Spades? So all of the spells will have these bold yellow words, and this word, if you do a left click on your mouse, it will open another window. And in this window, it will say that when in the hand, so basically when you have the card on the top of your head, it will increase the damage of the Jess, All or Nothing, and Bluff of Spades spells. So these spells specifically here are the spells that you have in your window. We have the Bluff here, we have the All or Nothing here, and we have the Jess here. So as you can see in the effect, we can see that the Jess will get more 2 base damage, the All or Nothing 4, and the Bluff of Spades also more 4 base damage, okay? So for each element we have a different type of knife. So for the air element we have the spades, for the water we have the clubs, for the earth we have the diamonds, and for the fire we have the hearts. So this is a bit important, and that's the difficult part of the passive of the Ecaflip, is that you kind of really need to know and to memorize a bit what are these names and what they associate to which element. Overall, very generally, the air element, when you get these buffs, so basically when you have the cards on top of your head and you use a type of spell that removes the cards, you get certain buffs, and these buffs will depend on which cards do you have on you. If you have 1 Jack of Spades, if you have 1 Jack of Clubs, or 1 Jack of Diamonds, and 1 Jack of Hearts on top of your head, when you use something that will remove these, for example, All or Nothing, so you basically will get these buffs. So plus 10 pushback damage for air, plus 4 critical chance for the Jack of Clubs, plus 10 for the critical resistance for Jack of Diamonds, and plus 10 heals for the Jack of Hearts. So all spells from each element always give the same buffs, just in different types of quantity. For example, we have the Jack of Spades that give plus 10, but if we go, for example, for Nerve, which is the one that costs the most, we'll see that we'll give 40 instead of 10. So it kind of depends on how much AP do you spend to use this spell. So the Reflex is a 2 AP spell, and the Nerve is a 5 AP, so basically the 2 AP gives 10, and the 5 AP gives 40. And it will give a different name of a card, so the 2 AP is a Jack of Spades, the 5 AP is the Ace of Spades. All the spades that you have, it's the Jack, the Queen, the King, and the Ace. And each one of them corresponds to how much AP did you use for each spell. So for the Jack you use 2 AP, and in this case it's the Reflex. For the Queen of Spades you use 3 AP, and it can either be the Claw of Sengal or the Jess. Then we have the King of Spades that can either be the Paw Pods or the Bravado. And then we have the Ace of Spades, which is the Nerve, which is the only one with 5 AP. So now we have a kind of more or less a clue of which spell gives which card, what bonus does each element gives. So now we'll go for the hardest part of the passive, which is kind of memorizing everything and every combinations that we possibly can have. So if we click on Ecaflip's Poker Winning Hands, we'll see a very detailed and long text, okay? But don't worry, this will take with time, and the more you play with this class, the more you'll know. So what is this? This is basically the combination of cards that you have on top of your head. When you use a spell that removes all these cards, it will give you a state, okay? And this will depend literally on which cards you have on top of your head. So, for example, the 4 aces, it will give you plus 200 of each element for 3 turns. And how do you accomplish this? Basically, you need to have an ace of each element on top of your head. So basically you need to, for example, do the Nerve, do the Misfortune, do the Peril, and do the Fate of Ecaflip. So you basically need to spend 20 action points in total so you have these 4 cards on top of your head, okay? There are a bit easier ways to do it, kind of depends a bit on luck, I will explain a bit later. Just take in mind that in order to get these buffs, you need to always have these cards on top of your head, okay? But normally this is not super achievable in game to have all of these cards on top of your head. But for example, you can either have these ones or you can also have the 4 jacks, which is very easy to accomplish. You basically just need to do the reflex, the Yahtzee, the top cash, and the heads or tails to be able to have these 4 cards on top of your head, and then when you use a spell to remove the cards, you'll gain this bonus for 3 turns. So this is way simpler to get the 4 jacks than the 4 aces, but nevertheless the 4 aces is still achievable, but it's more or less depends on luck, otherwise you'll have to always spend like 2 entire turns, always just using these 4 spells on these 2 turns, so it's a bit limited, but we'll check that later on how you can do this passive in a simpler way. So normally in the beginning we don't play Ecaflip as a multi-elemental, so it's important to know the states that kind of just depend on the element that you want to use, okay? So for example, if you want to use just a mono element, in here you have the royal straight in spades, in clubs, hearts and in diamonds. So these 4 here are the ones for each element. Chance, we have the royal straight in clubs, and here we can see basically what we have to do. We need to have a jack, queen, king and ace of clubs. So when this combination is in hand, you increase the luck spell plus 6 base damage, bluff of clubs plus 28 base damage. So basically when you use this spell, you'll do more 28 base damage if you have all these 4 cards on your hand, and your spell here, luck, will get 6 base of damage, okay? So if you have all the 4 elements in your hand, you will not use the 140 power, but either you'll use this one, which will give you 140 chance and buff some spells, okay? This one is just in case, for example, you have a jack, queen, king of water, and then you have an ace of air. In this case, will give you the 140 power. So then you just have to go through more or less all of the combinations and see and start to memorize a bit, little by little, what do they give. But if you don't want to memorize, it's also fine, because there are so many combinations that you will always have some type of power or some type of element bonus, but it's always important to know what you're playing for. And the more you evolve as an Ecaflip, the more you should know about this, and the more you can control your own buffs. So for example, if you're playing a water element, but you need to heal your allies, you can always buff your healing, which will be quite a lot, and still do some healing, even though you don't have any type of intelligence or any type of healing on your equipment and characteristic. So don't worry, you don't need to know everything on the first day, just take it as an adventure. So now we have understood more or less the passive, so that's halfway to know how to play Ecaflip.